She robbed my life savings while I lay in the hospital. She had no idea I was 3 steps ahead. Stick with me while I share my story, and if it touches you, don't forget to support our channel by hitting that subscribe button, dropping a like, and sharing it with the people you care about. I never thought I'd see the day my own wife could betray me. My name is Ethan Collins, and I spent years working hard, saving every penny, and building a future for the family I believed I was creating with Lila. She always seemed sweet, loving, and supportive. I trusted her with everything, even the little details I thought mattered the most, our finances, our plans, our dreams. It all began when I had a sudden accident that landed me in the hospital. The doctors said it was serious, but I never imagined it would be the start of a nightmare I couldn't have predicted. As I lay in that hospital bed, weak and dependent on others, I noticed subtle things that didn't add up. Lila's smile seemed forced, her visits were shorter than before, and she always seemed distracted whenever I asked about the future. One afternoon, I overheard a phone call she thought I couldn't hear. She was talking to someone about accounts and transfers, mentioning numbers that made my stomach turn. I stayed quiet, pretending I hadn't noticed anything, because deep down I had a sinking feeling that something was terribly wrong. The truth hit me hard a few days later when I was able to access some of our records. Lila had transferred our joint savings and even the inheritance I had received from my father into her own name. Every dollar I had worked for, every sacrifice I had made, vanished without my knowledge. I couldn't believe it. She had taken everything while I was at my most vulnerable, lying helpless in a hospital bed. I felt a storm of emotions: shock, betrayal, anger, and heartbreak. How could someone I loved so deeply do something so cruel? I wanted to confront her immediately, to yell, to demand answers, but I knew I needed to stay calm. Any rash action would ruin the chance I had to regain what was mine. Even as I recovered slowly, I kept my eyes open. Every gesture, every word, every little habit of hers became a clue. I realized that Lila had underestimated me. She thought I was weak, distracted, and broken. She didn't know that while she believed she had taken control, I was already planning the next steps. I started noticing patterns: trips she took, sudden purchases, and her little lies stacking up. Each one was a piece of the puzzle, and I vowed I would put it all together. The betrayal cut deep, but it also awakened something in me. I couldn't change the past, but I could control what happened next. And I was ready to take back everything she had taken, step by step, without her ever realizing it. Even from that hospital bed, I knew this was not the end of my story. It was only the beginning. Marcus had been my friend for years, the kind of friend who notices things even when you try to hide them. During one of his visits to the hospital, he pulled me aside and whispered, "Ethan, I don't like how Lila has been acting. Something feels off." At first, I tried to brush it off, telling myself I was overthinking. But the seed of doubt had been planted, and I couldn't ignore it. Lila had always been attentive, hovering around me, asking if I needed water or blankets. But now, her attention felt calculated, almost rehearsed. She smiled too much when visitors came, laughing lightly at jokes that didn't seem funny, and quickly changed the subject whenever I asked about our finances. It was subtle, but I noticed the way she avoided eye contact when the word money came up. Even in the hospital room, she would check her phone constantly, stepping out for long periods under the excuse of calls or errands. Something in her tone, the way she hurried back in as if nothing had happened, triggered unease inside me. I couldn't see the full picture yet, but every action and every word was a warning sign. The first pangs of emotional betrayal hit me hard. It wasn't just about money. It was the realization that the person I had trusted most, the person I loved and built my life around, might be hiding something enormous from me. That thought alone was like a punch to the chest, and I felt a mix of sadness, anger, and disbelief. I kept replaying her gestures in my mind, too many smiles, too many excuses, and a subtle nervousness that she couldn't fully hide. I had to be careful. Acting impulsively would only alert her. So I decided to investigate quietly, like a shadow moving through my own home. I started keeping mental notes of her habits, where she went, what she asked, the timing of her calls. Every small inconsistency became a clue. I realized I needed to observe more, gather facts, and not let my emotions cloud my judgment. Marcus kept visiting, and each time he shared his observations, my suspicions grew stronger. He had noticed small hints I hadn't, bank statements left open on the table, extra receipts that didn't make sense, and casual comments Lila made about money without realizing their implications. It was becoming clear that this wasn't a simple mistake or oversight, something bigger was happening behind my back. Even though I felt vulnerable and weak physically, my mind became sharper. I knew I couldn't confront her yet, I needed a strategy. The betrayal felt heavy, but it also fueled a quiet determination. I promised myself I would uncover the truth, piece by piece, without letting her suspect I was aware of her deceit. As I lay in the hospital bed, planning my next moves, one thing was certain, the woman I thought I knew was hiding secrets, and I was going to find them, no matter how long it took. It happened one quiet evening when I finally got access to our bank statements. My heart sank as I scrolled through the numbers. Every dollar I had worked for, every saving I had painstakingly set aside, was gone. Lila had drained our life savings completely. I couldn't believe my eyes. The reality hit me like a punch. I had been betrayed in the most personal way imaginable. I thought about all the nights I had stayed late at work, picking up extra shifts just to make sure we had enough for a house, for vacations, for a secure future. I remembered helping Lila pursue her dreams, paying for courses she wanted, supporting her small business ideas, giving up personal comforts so she could have what she wanted. And now, all that effort, all that sacrifice, had been erased without a second thought. It wasn't just the money. It was the emotional betrayal that stung even more. I had trusted her completely, confided in her about my fears and hopes, and believed she felt the same about me. Yet here she was, smiling, pretending nothing was wrong, while secretly taking everything I had worked for. The deception cut deeper than any financial loss could. I felt a whirlwind of emotions, heartbreak, anger, disbelief, and a cold sense of shock that left me momentarily numb. How could someone who claimed to love me do this? How could she look me in the eye and lie so convincingly? Every memory of our shared moments now felt tainted, every kind word she had spoken now seemed like part of her act. I wanted to confront her immediately, to yell, to demand answers, but a small voice inside me told me to wait. I realized that rushing into a confrontation would only give her the chance to manipulate the situation further. She needed to see the consequences of her choices herself, to realize that her actions had a cost, and I had to be patient to make sure justice was done. So I took a deep breath and forced myself to calm down. I started planning quietly, thinking of ways to regain what was mine and make her accountable. My mind went over every detail, every hint I had noticed before, every suspicious action she had taken. Everything was starting to make sense now, and I knew I had to use that knowledge wisely. The pain was heavy, but it also lit a fire inside me. I couldn't let this betrayal define me. I needed to be smarter, more patient, and strategic. Lila thought she had won, but she had no idea that I was already plotting my next moves. I had discovered the truth, and from that moment, nothing would be the same again. I realized one thing clearly, confronting her now would be pointless. She needed to feel the weight of her own choices, and I was determined to make sure she did, without her ever suspecting that I already knew everything. As I started to recover from my accident, I realized that showing weakness would only give Lila an advantage. I forced myself to appear calm, to smile when she entered the room, and to act as if everything was normal. Inside, I was struggling with anger and heartbreak, but I knew I had to be strategic. Any sign of suspicion could tip her off and ruin my plan. During my hospital stay, I began quietly documenting her behavior. I noted every trip she made, every sudden purchase, and every excuse she offered about money. Even the smallest inconsistencies mattered. I kept mental records and scribbled notes in a journal I hid from her. I paid attention to how she spoke about our finances, noticing subtle lies and gaps in her stories. Piece by piece, a clearer picture was forming in my mind, and I could see exactly how much she had taken and how she was spending it. One person who noticed my quiet determination was Rachel, a nurse who had cared for me during my recovery. She approached me one day while changing my four and said, "Ethan, I see the way you're watching her. I know something is wrong. You're not just recovering, you're planning." I appreciated her observation but said nothing, only giving a small nod. Her awareness gave me comfort, a silent reminder that I wasn't entirely alone in my struggle. While pretending to be weak and passive, I also began to rebuild a financial plan. I explored ways to regain control of what Lila had taken without alerting her. I contacted banks, researched legal options, and quietly calculated how to reclaim my money in steps. Every move had to be subtle. I couldn't allow her to suspect that I was already preparing to fight back. The emotional struggle was intense. On one side, my heart ached at the betrayal, at the trust one had placed in someone who had no intention of honoring it. On the other side, a desire for revenge burned inside me, tempered by the need for patience and strategy. I knew acting on anger would only make things worse. My revenge had to be precise, calculated, and completely under the radar. Every day, I reminded myself that patience was a weapon. I kept smiling when Lila entered, asked polite questions, and maintained the image of a man still under her control. But behind that calm exterior, I was gathering strength, information, and resources. Each day brought me closer to the moment when I could take back what was mine and make her face the consequences of her choices. Even in my heartache, I felt a quiet determination grow. I wasn't just recovering from an accident, I was preparing for the reckoning that would finally expose the truth and restore what she had stolen. My patience was no longer just about survival, it was the first step toward victory. Lila grew more confident with every passing day, acting as if she had already won. She walked around with an air of arrogance, almost proud of the life she was living, except it wasn't her life at all. It was mine. She started buying new clothes, expensive jewelry, and things she had never even talked about before. Every time she showed up with a new bag or a fresh manicure, I knew exactly where the money had come from. She thought I was too weak or too distracted to notice. In her mind, she had outsmarted me completely. She didn't hide her spending either. She acted like nothing was wrong, like this new luxurious lifestyle was just something she naturally deserved. Watching her use the money I had worked so hard for felt like being stabbed again and again. I stayed quiet, keeping my face calm, but inside I was boiling. My inner monologue became sharper each day, reminding me to stay observant, reminding me not to react, reminding me that patience would lead to results. I watched everything. The way she talked, the things she carried, the phone calls she tried to take in private but didn't hide well enough. My mind recorded every detail like a camera. I could see her greed growing, her lies becoming bolder. And with each new clue, my plan became clearer. The emotional tension inside me grew heavier. There were moments I wanted to scream, moments I wanted to confront her and demand why she would do this to me. But I held back. I reminded myself that losing control would only give her the chance to twist the truth. My quiet suffering had a purpose. I had to let her feel safe, let her believe she had the upper hand, because that was the only way I could fully expose her later. So I began setting subtle traps. Nothing obvious, nothing that would scare her. Just small tests to see how far her greed would go. I mentioned fake opportunities, hinted at imaginary funds, and watched how quickly her eyes lit up at the mention of more money. Each reaction confirmed what I already knew: she wasn't just careless. She was intentionally deceitful, and she was waiting for the next chance to take even more. She didn't realize that I was watching her every move, studying her patterns, understanding her desires and weaknesses. She didn't know that her arrogance was making my job easier. Every lie she told, every selfish action she took, became another piece of evidence I could use later. While she flaunted her new life, I stayed silent, knowing that the time for silence wouldn't last forever. And even though it hurt to see her enjoy the things I had earned, I held on to the thought that soon, she would have to answer for all of it. I wasn't done. Not even close. I started confronting Lila, but in ways that didn't look like confrontations at all. I asked simple questions, questions any husband would ask. "Hey, Did you ever check on that savings account, or did you end up paying that bill last week, or where did you go earlier? I thought you said you'd be home. Each time, she stiffened just a little. Her smile would tighten, or her eyes would dart away for a second before she forced herself to answer. She tried to hide it, but the defensiveness slipped through. She gave vague explanations about bank mistakes, forgotten errands, or surprise deals she'd just had to grab. Those cracks in her confidence confirmed that she knew exactly what she was doing, and she knew it wouldn't look good if the truth came out. I kept my voice calm and my expression soft, pretending these questions were harmless. Meanwhile, every answer she gave became another piece of the puzzle. I started planting small bits of evidence, things only she would react to, fake account reminders, printed statements placed casually on the table, and notes that looked like I had been checking numbers. I didn't accuse her openly, but I wanted her to feel the pressure slowly tightening around her. While doing all this, I couldn't stop the memories from surfacing. Flashbacks from better times hit me at random, her laughing in the kitchen while cooking dinner, the two of us planning vacations we never took, the nights we talked about our future like we were a team. Those moments made the betrayal burn even deeper. The contrast between who she pretended to be and who she truly was cut through me every time. But I didn't let the pain show. I held it inside, letting it sharpen my focus instead of breaking me. I knew I had to stay controlled, precise, and patient. Any emotional outburst would only help her escape what she had done. As days passed, the atmosphere in the house became heavier. She sensed something was wrong but couldn't figure out how much I knew. That uncertainty made her nervous. She jumped at small sounds, checked her phone more often, and avoided discussions about money altogether. The suspense built quietly, and I could feel the shift. The balance of power was changing. She had no idea what I had documented, no idea what I had planned, and no idea how close she was to being exposed. Every indirect question, every subtle trap, every piece of evidence slowly pulled the truth closer to the surface. Revenge wasn't just possible, it was getting closer with every passing day. And even though I stayed silent on the outside, inside I knew one thing: Lila's time was running out. Once I was strong enough to move around again, I quietly began putting my plan into motion. I knew I couldn't get my money back by simply confronting Lila. She would lie, twist the truth, and pretend to be innocent. So I turned to legal loopholes and careful maneuvering. I contacted the bank privately and explained parts of the situation without giving away too much. I asked questions about joint accounts, rights, and transfers done without consent. Every answer gave me another path to reclaim what was mine. Lila still believed I was weak and dependent, too distracted by my recovery to notice anything. She acted like I was someone she could easily keep under her control. That false confidence worked in my favor. It kept her careless, and her carelessness gave me opportunities. The tension grew stronger when she began making even bigger purchases. She bought designer bags, expensive electronics, and even started talking about taking a trip by herself to clear her mind. She didn't realize that these purchases created trails that could expose her misuse of my funds. Each new item she brought into the house was another piece of evidence waiting to be used against her. I knew I couldn't do all of this alone, so I reached out to the two people I trusted, Marcus and a financial advisor he recommended. When I told them the situation, neither of them judged me. They simply nodded, ready to help. The advisor helped me understand what I could legally claim back, what transactions could be challenged, and how to document everything correctly. Marcus helped gather information and kept an eye on things I couldn't handle yet. Their support gave me strength when I needed it most. Even with determination driving me forward, the heartbreak never left. Every time I took a step to protect myself, I felt the weight of what Lila had done. I had married her believing she cared about me, believing we were building a life together. To see her treat my recovery like an opportunity to steal made my chest tighten with pain. Still, I didn't let that pain stop me. I used it to stay sharp. Whenever I felt myself getting emotional, I reminded myself why I was doing this. I reminded myself that intelligence and patience were the only way to win. As the days went on, I filed quiet claims, set up new accounts, and moved my remaining assets into safe places Lila couldn't touch. Each step brought me closer to taking back control. And through it all, I kept up the same calm, quiet act around her, letting her believe she still had the upper hand. She had no idea that beneath that calm surface, everything was shifting. No idea that her time of playing games with my life was nearing its end. It didn't take long for Lila's reckless spending to catch up with her. She had grown so confident, so sure that I was still blinded by weakness, that she stopped being careful. The money she stole wasn't endless, but she behaved like it was. Her arrogance pushed her into making bigger, louder financial moves that finally drew the attention they deserved. One afternoon, I received a call from the bank asking about unusual activity linked to accounts I had already reported as suspicious. That was the opening I needed. I gathered every document I had collected, every receipt, every transfer record, and every note I had written over the past weeks. I arranged everything neatly, step by step, showing exactly how Lila had drained the savings and moved the inheritance without my consent. When I walked into the bank and later spoke with the authorities, I felt a calm I hadn't felt in a long time. There was no anger left in my voice, just quiet certainty. I handed over the folder containing all the evidence. The case was clear. Every transaction traced back to her. Every lie she told had a paper trail. For the first time since the betrayal began, I felt the weight on my chest lift just a little. Lila only realized something was wrong when the bank froze the accounts. I watched her confusion turn into panic as she tried to access the funds she thought were hers to spend. She ran around the house making calls, demanding answers, but all she met were locked accounts and questions she couldn't explain away. When she finally looked at me, really looked, I saw the moment she understood. She had underestimated me completely. She thought I was weak, predictable, and easy to manipulate. She never expected me to fight back quietly, to gather everything I needed without raising my voice, to use her own actions against her. As she stood there speechless, I couldn't help but remember the earlier days, the times I trusted her without thinking twice, the moments we planned a future that now felt like a lie. The flashbacks made the contrast even sharper. Her betrayal had been loud, chaotic, and greedy. My response had been calm, patient, and deliberate. The difference stung, but it also showed me how far I had come. Watching her face crumble under the truth brought a strange sense of catharsis. Not joy, not satisfaction, just a deep, steady relief. Justice wasn't loud or dramatic. It was quiet, and it came from clarity and preparation. The authorities began their process, the bank confirmed the fraudulent transfers, and everything started shifting back into my hands. For the first time in months, I felt a sense of control return. Lila's downfall had begun, not because I shouted or reacted, but because she exposed herself through her own greed. And as everything unfolded, I knew this was the moment I had been preparing for. Justice was finally approaching, step by steady step. Ethan finally reached the moment he had been preparing for. After all the pain, confusion, and betrayal Lila caused him, he managed to gather every piece of evidence he needed. Quietly and patiently, he traced every transaction she had made, every lie she had told, and every step she took to hide what she had done. When the truth was clear, he used it wisely, not with anger, but with calm determination. He filed the case, made sure the authorities were involved, and watched as the stolen money slowly found its way back to him. When Ethan and Lila finally met face to face, he didn't raise his voice. He didn't insult her or argue. Lila looked shaken, as if she expected him to explode, but he stayed still, letting silence speak for him. She tried to explain herself, but her excuses sounded empty even to her own ears. For the first time, she had to face the weight of her choices without a way out. Ethan didn't need to remind her of the trust she broke. She could feel it herself in his calm eyes. Seeing him stand there with dignity made Lila realize she had lost much more than money. She had lost a good man who once cared for her more than she deserved. Now, she stood alone, desperate and exposed, while Ethan stood firm, stronger than she had ever seen him. The police report, the legal notice, and the truth all came together around her, leaving no space to escape. She understood that her actions had finally caught up with her. Ethan walked away from that meeting lighter than before. It wasn't happiness exactly, it was relief. A quiet, powerful relief that came from knowing he didn't have to fight anymore. He had his money back. He had cleared his name. And most importantly, he had kept his self-respect intact. He didn't need revenge that screamed, he chose a revenge that taught. His patience had protected him. His intelligence had uncovered the truth. And the timing he chose made everything fall into place. The people around him could see the change. He wasn't broken by what happened. He wasn't bitter. He had simply closed a chapter with the confidence of someone who refused to be defined by betrayal. Ethan learned that the deepest cuts don't always come from enemies, they often come from the people we trust the most. But he also learned that staying calm, staying smart, and waiting for the right moment can turn pain into strength. As Lila faced the consequences she created for herself, Ethan moved forward with a quiet pride. The storm she brought into his life no longer had any power over him. His victory wasn't loud, but it was complete. And as he stepped into a new chapter of his life, he carried only one lesson with him: betrayal hurts, but the sweetest revenge is rising above it with grace. Ethan finally allowed himself a moment to breathe. The chaos was over, and the truth had already taken its place. As he sat quietly one evening, he thought about everything he had been through. The betrayal, the shock, and the long process of setting things right had all left a mark on him. But instead of feeling broken, he felt wiser. He realized how important it was to stay alert in life, to trust carefully, and to value himself more than he ever had before. What happened had taught him that anyone can be fooled, but what matters is how you rise again. During the hardest days, Marcus had been the steady hand on his shoulder. Ethan remembered every call, every late-night conversation, and every word of support Marcus gave him without any judgment. Knowing someone stood by him when everything felt uncertain made him feel grateful in a way he hadn't fully understood before. Through Marcus, Ethan learned that real friends don't just cheer for you when things are good, they hold you together when things fall apart. That realization alone made him feel stronger. As Ethan looked back, he didn't feel the need to forgive Lila. He understood now that forgiveness isn't something you owe to the person who hurt you. It's something you give yourself so you can move forward without carrying their actions on your back. He let go of the bitterness, not for her, but for his own peace. He refused to let her choices shape the rest of his life. Instead, he focused on freeing his heart from the weight she had put on it. Slowly, he started rebuilding his life, step by step. He organized his finances, fixed the disruptions her actions caused, and planned his future with more care than before. He took better control of his decisions, set new goals, and worked on things he had paused when everything fell apart. There was a calm determination in him now, not loud or dramatic, just steady. He knew the road ahead wouldn't be perfect, but he also knew he had the strength to handle whatever came next. Ethan began to feel more like himself again, but not the same version he was before. He was more grounded, more thoughtful, and more confident. He didn't see himself as someone who had been fooled, he saw himself as someone who survived something painful and came out with clearer eyes. The experience changed him in ways he never expected, but they were changes he welcomed. As he stepped into a new phase of his life, Ethan held on to a simple truth: some people may take advantage of your kindness, some may even steal from you, but they can never take your future unless you let them. With strength, patience, and self-respect, he protected what mattered most, his spirit. And now, with his past behind him and his faith restored, he was finally ready to move forward with confidence and hope.